do you hope to accomplish afterwards in coming to the city with that information?
Thanks, that's a great question. So the purpose tonight is to gather our college campus together. People are dismayed. Some of our students are quite traumatized by what they witnessed. Many of our students have already expressed their deep concern for what happened and their denouncement of those activities of some of their peers. So we want to give our students an opportunity to be heard, and then we want to use this as an opportunity to leverage how we move forward as our campus community, and of course we will share all of the information that comes out of that with our colleagues here in the city.
The lady right there behind Ian, and then Ian will be next.
Hi, Melanie Funda with the Associated Press. This is for Chief Meola. So what sorts of charges could you be looking at for the people who are displaying the riotous behavior and possible, punishments for that? And also, is the state at all, because I know Governor Hassan's office had mentioned being involved, can you explain or clarify what their involvement in the process is?
Sure. First, I just want to go back to the gentleman asked about the ball rounds that were fired. And I actually do have the numbers here. They were just hiding from me on the paper. Approximately 10 of those rounds were fired. Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, Melanie, I forgot all of your questions.
I may have to. Can you tell me what sorts of charges you might be looking for, punishments, and then also
I'll start with
the
that.
governor's office, and then if you can clarify the role of the governor's office and possibly Attorney General, if at all possible, in the process.
Thank you. I can write these down. Relative to charges, I mean, obviously we'll be looking at perhaps riot, we would be looking at criminal mischief, we would be looking at disorderly conduct perhaps. That'll better be determined as we look at the footage and look at the behaviors. Those are the things that come to mind based upon what I saw that night walking around, so those are the types of charges we would be looking to bring. Relative to levels of charge, we could be looking at misdemeanors to perhaps felonies based upon some of the behaviors and the extent of their participation. Now, relative to the governor's office, the governor was absolutely very concerned about what occurred here. We did meet yesterday. She toured the area where this occurred, and she'll be looking at, or she vowed to start looking at some legislation that perhaps might inhibit these type of gatherings and the groups that try to bring them together. So nothing concrete yet. This is all new to us as well. So as we work through what occurred and how it occurred, why it occurred, certainly we'll be looking at ways to mitigate it in the future.
Can I just have a follow-up question? There were riots last year as well, much smaller, of course. But so what was different this year? What happened? What changed?
Well, I think the behaviors we saw last year were very similar, to be quite honest. They were contained within 2 yards on Winchester Court, and we decided to contain it there and leave it there. Now, through social media, we had information that some of these groups were going to try and make a run onto Main Street, and obviously our first priority was protecting those who were on Main Street. So we took action to contain it and push it back from that occurring. Now, the difference was this was actually on the city streets. It wasn't like it was a party we had to go break up. These were gatherings that occurred on public property, disrupting traffic, disrupting people's lives, disrupting the quality of life, putting people in potential for some serious harm. And not only to themselves, but to their properties as well. So I think therein lies the difference, that this was out in the public, that nobody organized it. It kind of came together on its own, wherein last year there was an organized party that occurred.
Thank you.
Rick,
Yes, Carl, go ahead.
To the same movement. I gave a full briefing to the Attorney General this morning. He's very concerned, and at the upcoming meetings, I know somebody from his office will attend, if not himself. To the crimes, I think you need to look at what the potential was for some of these. I saw shields that were smashed from bottles the potential for attempted first-degree assault, second-degree assault. I think it's inconclusive until we gather all the evidence, but the potential for somebody being seriously injured or killed was there. And I think it's also important for you to know that the chief and I have been in constant communication since we left that night. We have been talking and preparing and trying to get coordinated to move this forward the right way.
All right, Ian?
Hi, Ian Freeman from freekeene.com. This question is for Ken Meola. Police were recorded shooting pepper balls at houses on Winchester Street in the broad daylight after the street was cleared, when the occupants on the porches were merely hanging out, as happened every weekend here in Keene. What was the reason for that escalation of violence, and do you think it helps the image of the police?
Yeah, I would actually have to see the video of that and understand why that level of use of force was used. Without having an accounting of what perhaps those folks were doing, whether or not they were throwing bottles at the police or acting aggressive towards them, it's hard to answer that question. We train our officers to use the level of force necessary to calm the situation, to get it under control. So at this point, I would have to assume it's an appropriate level of force until we see further. We will be reviewing this relative to the use of force levels from the video we have, from the reports that are filed. And your second question was about?
How do you feel that sort of behavior affects the image of the police?
I think if the officers did what they were trained to do within policy, I think it upholds the professionalism of the department in how we deal with aggressive individuals and subjects who are trying to harm others.
Thank you. The gentleman over here. And then we'll go over here to you, Mark.
Hi, Michael Brunley from New Hampshire Public Radio. Just a couple questions for Chief Meola. One, you talked about outside elements. I was hoping maybe you could speak a little more about that as far as what impact that had, and have you heard about the company Finner Rage, and did they have any role in this at all, and if so, would they be culpable potentially criminally in this situation? And second, did the department ever consider using the Bearcat? Did it use it? And if so, was that discussion had, and why or why not?
You guys have a lot of questions about this issue. Okay, let me start with Bearcat first. It was staged close to the footprint. We did not envision using it. We didn't for this incident. There was no need. It wasn't that level of event, so we left it where it was. So it didn't even come into play, not even into our minds. Relative to Finner Rage, and I think that's really where social media played a big role with Finner Rage and how they market themselves to come and throw parties, and their term is ragers or rage. So I think that initially played a part in bringing elements to Keene. That's my sense as we read the social media, as we saw some of the communications that were taking place there. That really prompted us to work closely with the students and with the landlords to let them know that if we're going to host this party, you have to do it responsibly, and you have to do it within the parameters of common sense. So as the landlords became aware of Finner Rage within this community, they all made it fairly clear they didn't want them on their property and the parties that ensue as a result, because they can tend to get out of control, as we've seen in the past. I'm not saying that was Finner Rage's fault in the past, I'm just saying that's what occurs. So I think they came into town to set up. The landlord where they were going to set up became aware of it, told them they were not welcome, and to the best of my knowledge, they did not set up and they went home. So I think the fact that the social media was already out there, they were coming and inviting people, perhaps brought that population here. Can't be certain of it, but that's my sense.
Over in the front row, Mark.
Hi, Martha Shannon from Keene Sentinel. My first question is just whether you know of any other more serious injuries that weren't included in the injuries that were treated in the field or at the hospital in Keene. And then also whether, before things got really crazy, if there was any thought of canceling the festival itself because of the possible danger to people in the festival. Why not?
Relative to the injuries, I think they're still trying to pull together all the data on that. I've been in contact with Fire Chief Howard. To the best of our knowledge, they dealt with lacerations and some head injuries. We did hear reports of burns from fireworks. We understand folks were throwing fireworks into the crowd and perhaps sustained some burns, but we have no confirmation that those were treated by the fire department or the hospital yet. That question is probably better directed to the hospital, to be quite honest. Relative to thoughts of canceling the Pumpkin Fest, no, we didn't have that thought. We felt we had a good plan to deal with what would occur. We felt all of the efforts that were made prior to and leading up to it were going to be effective. And I think, unfortunately, we were caught by surprise when things started earlier than we expected. We always plan these events based upon what we experienced last year and make improvements, and then try to envision what else might be, what might we need. And we thought we had it well in hand, to be quite honest, and you know, we fell a little short. But I have to say, all the men and women in uniform from the police and fire and emergency services stepped up wonderfully to help contain the problem until such time we could bring in reinforcements to help. And once reinforcements arrived, I think we contained it extremely well to keep it from blossoming further and then ultimately dissipating it later on in the evening. So no, there was no thought of canceling.
Yes, the gentleman over here.
Hi, I'm Nicky Wolf from The Guardian. I'm just wondering, there's videos of people chanting negative slogans towards the police. I was wondering if these events represent a growing disaffection with certain elements of the youth with law enforcement.
You know, I don't know the answer to that question. I suppose there are those who do. It seems we see it more and more, but I don't know the true answer to that. I can tell you that probably for every one person that was disrespectful, as the Colonel had stated earlier, the number of students and young people who came up to us and apologized for the behavior of others, I think highly negate that sentiment to a great degree. So that's my sense of it.
Colonel, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I think, I just don't, I want to make sure that we don't understate just how this had the aggressive nature that we saw that night. And I stood, shoulder to shoulder with the town manager and my major and lieutenant and chief, and to see full cans of beer going over your head, billiard balls, large rocks, large bottles of liquor. There's one thing to fawn, there's one thing to yell, there's one thing to cheer, there's one thing to commit acts of vandalism to a light post or to a vehicle or to a sign, but to turn your aggression towards another human being in a matter that they did is what I characterize as extremely serious. And I think it's important for you to know just what happened out there that night.
Thank you. Let's see, who else do we have? We'll take this gentleman, and then we'll take Darrell.
Thank you. Paul Billow from the Keene Sentinel. Chief Meola, just jumping off Martha's question a little bit, you felt you had this contained, but could you talk a little bit about the level of communication that may have been occurring between your commanders in the campus area and those officers who were protecting Pumpkin Festival? And were there any measures contemplated for the possibility that some element of the parties could have intruded on downtown?
You know, we always plan for that, and there's always that thought as we're dealing with these things, because they're so unexpected and so fluid, uncontrollable to some degree. But we felt like we had a great plan in place, and we've discussed this, prior to this ever occurring, and how we would manage these type of situations. And not only for this incident, I have to say, it's not just Pumpkin Fest. We plan these things. We've had other weekends where we've had riotous behavior that we've experienced in the past. So we do discuss, we do train on these things. The incident commanders had control of their people. They had them in the right places. They had the right demeanor and temper to keep the crowd at bay and not antagonize them. So, I think, in my opinion, it played to great success in how our plan worked to contain it and keep it off of Main Street. I never for a second felt threatened that it was going to make it to Main Street or into the footprint. I felt like we did have it under control in that respect.
Darrell Perry, Free Press Publications. On Saturday, there were initial reports of 5 dead. There were also reports of the governor having declared a state of emergency and upwards of 100 Massachusetts state troopers coming to assist. Can you confirm or deny any of those?
I can confirm all those things, actually. There were no dead, so the 5 dead is incorrect. Mass State Police did not participate. And I believe the governor did declare a state of emergency later in the evening based upon the reports she was receiving from the colonel, and based upon what was actually occurring on the ground. So hopefully that answers your questions.
Is there anyone else for the first time? Garret, I don't know that I recognize you as a press person. Are you a press person?
Oh, sure. I report at a number of sites. Well, anyway, my question...
Wait a minute, please.
Speaking of the press, on the night of this incident, I happened to be one of a few people who found our way into the crowd that was being somewhat riotous, and I captured lots of video.
Who are you?
My name is Garret Ian, and I report at freekeene.com, also represent Keene Peaceful Streets. There was a mention that there's going to be a large investigation, a lot of video, a lot of digital data is going to be collected. I'm curious, and I didn't see any police who happened to have their own form of video recording equipment or anything that was just, taking pictures, because if things are being projected at someone, the person with the best view of where it came from.
What's the question?
Were the police equipped with any cameras? Will you be using any of your own evidence, and in addition to the social media that's been mentioned?
No, we did not equip our officers with cameras, and moving forward, we see that as something that I think is a necessity and it can prove fruitful for these types of investigations. So,
Thank you very much. Is anyone else for the first time? Yes, right there.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Marsh, KSC TV. President Huot, you had said earlier that you were going to share some of the photos and videos with universities throughout the area. What universities are you in contact with right now?
I have been in contact this morning with the University of New Hampshire, Plymouth State University, and I believe that other colleges and universities in New England have contacted our public safety office, but I don't have that list right now.